And good morning and welcome. My name is Ryan Belmore. I am the owner and publisher of What's Up Newp. It is Monday, August 24th. Can you believe it? We are continuing our ongoing series of chatting with the candidates, the conversations with the candidates, one-on-one as we've been calling it. And we have just a few more city council candidates to get to. Again, they were in no order. It was just based on their availability as well as ours. So all 19 candidates for city council have been invited to participate, and we are getting to the final couple today. We have two coming up for you today. We have two for you coming up, or three for you coming up tomorrow. We have three tomorrow, and on Wednesday we have one as well. So I think we've talked to 17 of the 19 candidates or so. Just a reminder how some of this works is we have provided the candidates with some of the questions that we will be asking, and we'll also be doing some follow-ups as needed. And we've invited all candidates, and candidates have as long as they want or like to answer a question, go as deep as they want. And if you want to be an informed voter on September 8th when you head for the primary, you can head to whatsupnewp.com and see all of the candidates' profiles, all of the candidates' videos, and much more. Back from his little mini moon, his 30th wedding anniversary weekends is Mr. Frank Prosnitz, news editor at What's Up Newp. And
good to be back.
And how are you today?
Doing well.
Wow.
And how are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing good. You know, a couple days off. It was a long week of interviews last week, but it's been so fun to get to know the candidates, even some of the incumbents. I didn't know where they stood on some issues. I didn't know what great ideas they had, and we've been learning a lot through these.
They've been very interesting. Also, just a reminder, we will have superintendent of schools on this afternoon at 3:30. So that should be very interesting as well, as that remains a half mystery on what's going to happen in a few weeks when kids go back to school. If they ever go back to school, maybe they'll just stay out. Maybe we'll have an uneducated society. Who knows?
All right. Well, and yeah, if you want to go over the quick schedule, right now we have we'll be chatting with Meagan Landry in just a couple seconds here. The governor's weekly press briefing is coming up at 1 p.m. today. We'll carry that live on our website as well as on our Facebook page at 3:30 today, as well as next Monday. We'll be joined by Colleen Burns-Germain, who is superintendent of Newport Public Schools. At 5 p.m. today, we'll chat with Charlie Holder, who's running for Ward 2 on Newport City Council. And then at 6 p.m., we'll have the Portsmouth Town Council meeting live on our website as well as on our Facebook feed. So plenty to watch and do. And Megan, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No. I think just think about the breadth of just what you've heard, right? The schools, candidates, Newport, Portsmouth, the governor. I'm not sure that there are very many places that are able to pack all of that in just a few hours.
And I'll try to keep my sanity. And Meagan Landry, she is running for an at-large seat on Newport City Council. She is one of 12 candidates that needs you to head to the polls on September 8th and vote. You can vote for up to 4. The top 8 from that go on to November 3rd. And let's see if we did this right. And good morning, Megan.
Hey, I am
so happy.
Ryan.
Good morning, Frank. How are you?
It's terrific. Everybody's wearing hats.
I've got my hat. I got to represent Ragged Island. I think Matt and Bill do a great job over there, and blue's my favorite color, so I kind of wanted to match you guys.
Excellent. Yeah. And, you know, Frank, we've gotten more comments about us wearing hats from candidates than I think about anything else. Yeah.
Hopefully people notice more than the hats when they're watching. But
yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So, Megan, why don't we start off how we've started off with, I think, just about every candidate, you know, a little bit of your background, you know, what you do, you know, and why you chose to run for an at-large seat on Newport City Council.
Definitely. So my name is Meagan Landry. I'm 34 years old. I was born and raised here. Some would say I'm a 4th generation Newporter. Some would say I'm a 5th generation Newporter, depending on how you look at it, if you were actually born here or if you just moved here and lived here. My parents, Frank and Kathy, raised my sister Gretchen and I. I am a sales consultant with Sakuchi Honda. I've been with them for 8 years now. it's really great to be a young woman. Well, I guess I can't really call myself young at 34 anymore, but being a woman that's working for a woman-owned business that's predominantly male salespeople, it's challenging. And I was going to run in the next election in 2022, but I've talked to a lot of people that said, no, we need change now. And that's why I decided to kind of throw my hat in the ring with 11 other at-large candidates. And it's been a lot of fun. I have to say I was pretty nervous going into it. I didn't know what people would think. A big thing for me was I wanted people to know that I was doing it for me, that I wasn't doing it because my dad was really involved in local politics. We agree on a lot, but we also disagree on a lot of things. And number one thing that he really stood for when I was growing up was housing. And that's something that I think is really important. So that's something that we share in that regard. And just our schools. I'm running because we need a new school. If you don't vote for me, please, please, please vote yes for a new school. I'm begging you. And I'm sure we'll delve more into that later on, but I'm just really excited to be here. And one more thing I wanted to mention is I asked a candidate yesterday, have you heard from our local paper? Because I haven't. And she said no. And I thought it was just me maybe that they weren't really interested in talking to. So I'm just really glad that you guys are giving us this opportunity, just with everything going on with COVID and everything, that we can really get ourselves out there. So thank you.
And you are welcome.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Frank.
It's just a service. Just what we need to provide. And I'm going to long time in the news business, from print and all the stuff I've done. It is disappointing sometimes at how there isn't that breadth of coverage among all different media. We're doing our part, and we hope everybody else does theirs as well. Important that we have different viewpoints. But I wanted to follow up on just one thing that you had mentioned, and that's that the reason that you got into this now was because people said there was a need for change. What does that mean for you? Why is there a need for change now?
So I mentioned that I'm a fourth or fifth generation Newporter, and I want to stress that I don't think people should vote for me because my mom was a Topa or my dad was a Landry. I say those things because I think your family makes you who you are. And I know that my relatives are all really good people and they really care about this community. And that's why I'm running. And that's not to say that the current council doesn't care. I think there are a lot of people on it that do. But there's a lot of things just watching the meetings on Zoom since COVID started. And I've been really angry about some of the things that I've seen. And I think there are a lot of things that could be done to make Newport a better place than it already is. And I'm not saying that I'm going to sit at the table and change everything tomorrow, but I think you have to start somewhere. And again, I don't consider myself a young person being 34, but I think forward thinking with also that aspect of nostalgia that I have with Newport, I think that's something that I could bring to the table.
And Megan, we mentioned 19 people running. What do you credit it for or towards? Do you think it's people had more time to think while they were stuck in their houses during COVID, or do you think people really want to see change?
So I started working in Newport at 14. I worked at Frash's Bakery, then I worked at Jane Pickens. I interned at Newport this week. I've been working at Scoochie for 8 years, and I have never been unemployed. And I was unemployed for March and April, and it was really tough. I'm the kind of person, I get up in the morning and I go to work and I work hard, and I hated sitting at home watching Netflix and chilling. Like, it just wasn't for me. And I think that's really what did it for me when I was like, what more can I be doing? Not just for myself, but for the community, to just make it more than just your typical 9 to 5. I think anything that anyone can contribute, whether it be to our kids or our housing, or I think that's important. And even if you're not on the council, like you guys have said, if you can join planning boards or anything of that nature, I think that's great.
Yeah, there are lots of opportunities for people to get involved, whether it be running for office or serving the community in one way or another. Why don't we just jump right in? And you mentioned COVID. Do you think the city has done enough? How can the city be better in terms of dealing with some of those things that are going on, and some of the things that are being directed by Governor Raimondo?
So I haven't always agreed with everything that Gina's said and done, but as far as COVID goes, I think she's done a really fabulous job. I think Newport's done a really fabulous job as far as masks and just making sure, like Joe Nicholson is making sure that everyone has the proper PPE. Sakuchi was actually one of the local businesses that was recently found to be in complete COVID-19 compliance by the Department of Health. And we were inspected by a COVID-19 enforcement task force. And I think right now, just being open and fully operational can be scary for a lot of people. I know for me, getting into cars with people before we changed what we were doing, it was scary. And I just applaud businesses that are just getting it done. I don't think you should look at it as a slighted thing to not have made that list, because we're all just kind of doing the best we can under the circumstances. And I think that I'm really lucky that my owners have taken this seriously. And I know a lot of other local businesses that I've been to in the last few months have taken it really seriously. And I think one thing to note that I've noticed just talking to some local restaurants and bars in my neighborhood, I think it's important that we maintain the same rules for everyone. I know back July 4th weekend, I was talking to a couple business owners and they said, well, you know, this place was allowed this and we weren't. So I just don't necessarily agree with the different strokes for different folks kind of thing. I think as long as someone's in compliance, they should be allowed the same outdoor dining and they should be allowed the same live entertainment. And so I think that's something that if I were elected, I would just make sure that the same rules apply for everyone. And I was watching Ryan's interview with, I believe it was Caleb and Broad, Mission, Salvation. Oh God, I'm missing one. And those managers and owners. And I think just transparency. And as soon as we find out from the state what Gina wants, so it's not like a 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of thing, just being as transparent as possible so people can operate and make as much money as they can right now. I was walking around Newport yesterday with my dad and my sister, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised by the number of people that were out and wearing masks, by the way. I think that was a great thing to see.
And Megan, you know, one of the things, actually, have you been out chatting with people? If so, what are you hearing from people?
You know, I know there's a lot of people that don't get the mask thing and they think that it's stupid and they don't think they should be quote unquote forced to wear them. But at the end of the day, I'm not a professional when it comes to people's health. I'm not going to pretend to be. And if people like Dr. Fauci tell us that masks save lives, I think we have to wear them. I know I have to wear one at work from 9 to 6 every day. And by the time I get home, I just want to rip it off. But I don't think we want to be in a position where we have to wear them this time next year. I know I certainly don't. So the more we can do now to kind of help ourselves down the road, I think that's what we have to focus on.
And speaking about helping ourselves down the road, let's think about down the road. Let's see, the new city council would take their new seats, newly COVID clean seats in December. And, you know, we could still be in the middle of this, or it could be hopefully after. But some of the things the city or you could think could be done to help with the economic recovery during and after the pandemic.
So I know I'm one of the last candidates to go, and I'm just really thankful that I had this opportunity. I was worried I wouldn't get to chat with you guys.
I think we got 4 or 5 more, 4 more.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I've watched all the other interviews you've done, and there was one in particular that I had this idea in my head for this question, and then Susan Taylor actually said it, and I was like, darn it, now they're not going to think it was my original idea. But I think just marketing Newport as more than just a place where bachelor and bachelorette parties go to party and drink at our bars and eat at our restaurants. I mean, sure, we have great beaches, bars, and restaurants, but I think Newport deserves better than that. When I was a kid, we went to Colonial Williamsburg every year, and I love how they market themselves with all of the historical significance there. And I think we could be doing a better job with that, because Newport's one of the few places that you can go where you have Cliff Walk and you have Bellevue Avenue and you have White Horse Tavern, and I'm just looking at my notes here, and the triangle trade. That's something that a lot of kids don't even learn about in school these days. And to just marketing ourselves better from a historical significance standpoint, I think that's where we could make our money. I go to Fort Lauderdale, Florida every year with my best friend. And this past time, they have this giant park right on the water, and they actually allow people to rent these booths. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, why aren't we doing that? We have so many parks, and we could be allowing people to sell jewelry, hats, food, that sort of thing. And I know the city clerk is probably like, oh my God, she's going to give me so much to do with permits and licenses and things. But I think that's a great way that we could generate income and also have local artisans just expose themselves in a better way.
I guess I want to follow up on that a little bit, because one of the things that we've talked about is the diversity in terms of the economy in Newport. It's certainly predominantly tourism, with some other things as well. There's education, Salve Regina, and other things like that. And as I listen to you talk about marketing, and I spent some time as editor of the Business News, one of the things that always came to light for me was when companies were trying to relocate to a community, or they were considering a community for expansion. One of the key areas was the affordability and the comfort of that community to incoming executives. So I wonder if, in your vision, you also consider marketing Newport as a very livable city.
I would love to do that, but I think, and I know we're going to get to this question eventually, we have to get a new school. We have to have workforce housing. We have to have internet. I'm sitting in my aunt's house because my internet's always cutting out at my apartment, and I didn't want to lose you guys. I hate that Cox is the only source of internet on this island, and at our place it's terrible, and I feel bad for my landlord because we're always texting him how it's going out. But I think those are things that if we want to bring families into town, we have to work on those things. And otherwise, I know if I were a parent, I'm not, but if I was, I would want there to be a new high school here. I would want there to be housing that was affordable. And I think those are things that definitely need to be addressed.
Frank, you, me?
Yeah, either one. If going down our list, one of the and I don't want to miss any of the items that we've noted, because all of them are pretty significant. Why don't we jump to climate change for a moment, and whether or not you see that as a major concern in Newport, and if so, what might you do as a policymaker?
So I spent most of my 20s living on Elm Street, and that was, God, like a decade ago. And the intersections down on the point were constantly flooding. We just had that recent weather event where they were really flooded. But I know the council's taking that really seriously as far as tidal gates on Wellington Avenue and Washington Street. And I mentioned in another forum, I think we just have to be really aware of how we build going forward, particularly in the point section and down in that Kings Park area, and just make sure that any future development is lifted so that down the road those houses aren't underwater, because who's going to pay for the existing houses to be raised? I know the city doesn't have the money to do that. The state doesn't have the money to do that. So I think those are things that we have to think about. And I mentioned my dad before. He's kind of the water guy. He worked for the water department for the better part of my life. And I've been talking to him a lot about how sewage goes into the water when we have major storm events, and how we can prevent our beaches from shutting down in the summer, because that's a huge tourist attraction. So just looking at ways that we can kind of avoid those closures, I think, is important.
Meagan, I think we kind of hit a little bit on this, but just so I can get myself back in order here, do you think Newport relies too heavily on tourism, hospitality industry? What alternative industries should the city look to develop?
I think you have to rely on tourism when you're in a city like Newport, but I think COVID's taught us that you can't fully rely on that. I know we're so lucky to have Narragansett Bay right in our backyard. Not every community has that. And I think just looking at Iris and blue technology as far as fishing and and that sort of thing, and how we can kind of expand on that. And the Newport Career and Technical Center, I think that would be a great way to generate jobs in certain industries that we're not really focusing on right now. So if I would be interested in talking more with them if I were elected, just to see how we can get our kids in the high school out into the workforce, because I think that benefits everyone.
Do you see any particular niche that the city ought to be pursuing, whether it be technology, whether it be manufacturing, service type jobs? Where might you see, and understanding that you see tourism as the key industry on the island, but where should the concentration be otherwise?
I think, like my sister, for example, she's been a waitress for the last 10 years, and she makes more in one night downtown than I make in a bad week, which is crazy to me. But she's also going to school to become a doctor. And so I think just focusing on livable wage jobs that last year round versus just hospitality jobs that are in the summer months, and how we can help those people that don't necessarily have a job for the off season. That's what I would be interested in looking at, just because our middle class is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and we have to look at ways of how to save that.
One of the things you touched on, and it kind of, I think, goes into our next question, which is really about systemic racism, whether you see it as a problem in the city and the state. But you also mentioned affordable housing, which is a piece of all of that.
Definitely. So I believe systemic racism is a problem anywhere you go, which in 2020 is really sad. I mentioned on my Facebook page yesterday that I only have had 3 teachers of color my whole life. And I think being a person of color, which I'm not, but if I were, I think that's really discouraging. And I think we need to be promoting people in our community and across the country to really motivate kids in this community to want to break down barriers. I don't know if you guys saw, I did talk to Jasmine Gigi Mason. She's a professional bowler, and I talked to her people, and she's going to be coming down to Newport to talk to our kids once assemblies are allowed, because I think that's really important. And I don't want to be the person that just says, this is what I'm going to do. I'm trying to be the candidate that's like actually doing things before I'm even elected, so people take me seriously. And I think that the more we can expose people to the kids in our community, the greater those kids are going to grow up to be, because they'll have hope. And I think that's important.
Let's see here. Well, let's dive over to a topic that always comes up before the question is even asked, because it shows the importance of it. And we head to the schools. And in case this is the only video that everybody watches, on November 3rd, Newport residents are going to be voting whether to support a school bond, which would add an addition at Pell School, as well as replace Rogers High School. Do you support the question? And if not, or if the bond fails, what do you think the city should do to address school building needs?
So I'm going to try to not get emotional right now, because this topich is something that's
get emotional. Emotional is great for video.
It's one of the reasons I'm running. For people that know me, they know this, but you guys probably don't. In 2006, I went to China, and I lived there for a few months, and I taught English as a second language. And I mean China, not like Beijing or Hong Kong. It was, you had to take a bus to get to another bus to get to another bus. And then the schools in China in 2006 were better than the schools in Newport in 2020. And I don't want to have to repeat what I just said, but just think about that for a second. We live in Newport, Rhode Island, and the schools in China in 2006 were nicer than the schools here. And I think that's something that we have to address. I think that when I look at pictures of our school now, how we can send our kids to a school where there's water leaking, there's mold, there's rodents, it's just inexcusable. And I feel so bad for the educators that have to go there every day, because it must be so difficult to have to motivate your kids when they feel like they're not important enough to go to a healthy building. And without getting too much into my own backstory, I went to Cranston Calvert for K through 5. I went to Thompson from 6 through 8, and I went to Rogers for 9th grade. And while Rogers wasn't necessarily the best school for me personally, Newport has awesome schools. Academically, artistically, athletically, there are so many great kids that come out of our schools. Like I said, my sister's going for her doctorate right now. So just because it didn't work for me personally, it doesn't mean that the schools are bad. I talked to Mr. Kimes about a month or so ago. He joined the special ed department literally right after I left. And I always kind of joke with my parents, like we were kind of two ships passing in the night, if you will. And I feel like if he had been there when I was there, my experience would have been a much different one. Because while there were teachers there that were definitely great teachers, there were one or two that we just didn't click for whatever reason. But again, that's not to say that it's a bad school. So it really bothers me when I see comments online about regionalization and parents who are like, I don't want my kids to go to school with those kids, because I think that says more about that person than it does about our kids. And I'll just leave it at that.
What should happen if the bond fails?
That's my number one concern, and I hate even talking about it and putting it out into the universe because I have to believe that it won't fail. But it's definitely something that we have to think about. I am strongly opposed to busing kids here, there, and everywhere across the state because I had to take a bus to get to my high school, and it was 45 minutes on the RIPTA each way, and I don't think that that's the answer. I don't think fixing the current school is the answer because it's just not cost effective. So I think for the people that are planning on voting no, I ask you to call me or email me and let me know what your plan is so we can talk about it, because I just don't see any other solution. And we're getting 52.5% reimbursement from the state. So this is the most affordable option. If we wait, we're going to be paying more, and that just doesn't make sense from a fiscal standpoint.
I think we talked about it, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on your 3 top priorities if you're elected.
Obviously, a new school is number one.
I think I heard that. Yeah.
Workforce housing is number 2. I hear a lot of people talk about the North End with this like negative connotation, and that really bothers me as well. My dad lives on Hillside Avenue, and I have clients that live on Hillside Avenue, and the North End is a really great place. And I know I was looking at townhouses on Mariner Way. I love my landlord, but I'm 34 and I have roommates, and I eventually like to buy a house. And the only reason I didn't buy that townhouse was because there's no walkability there right now. I mean, other than the pub at 2 Mile Corner where I would just eat a whole lot of chicken wings, you can't walk downtown. So I think for me, being a younger adult, I would love having workforce housing in the North End and having mixed use buildings where you have restaurants and you have shops and you could walk to those things and afford to live there, and then just hop in your car and get to work in 5-10 minutes. That's like my ultimate dream. And then number 3 is just really from a humanitarian standpoint. Not a lot of people have talked about homelessness in Newport or our senior citizens in Newport. My uncle, when he was 13, I believe, he developed schizophrenia. And I'm just so glad that he has the family that he has, because if you look at our homeless population, a lot of them have mental health issues. They have substance abuse issues, and they don't have families to help them. So I think that's definitely something that we need to address. I was looking at an article in the Providence Journal. Oh God, all my days are blending together, so I apologize. It was yesterday. And I reached out to this group, and if you give me 1 second, I can tell you more about it. Let me just see here. So it's called Shower to Empower, and it's through House of Hope in Providence. And I asked them if they could bring their mobile unit to Newport, because a lot of people don't think about when you're homeless, you don't have a place to shower, and you don't have a place to wash your hands, and you don't have a place to use the bathroom. And a lot of our water fountains are shut down right now due to COVID. And that's something that no one's really talking about. And so I think it's definitely something that needs to be addressed, as well as our senior citizen population and just making sure that they're being taken care of.
Do you know if, in fact, there are other organizations that are providing those services within the city?
I know that the city of Providence went through HUD to get that funding. And again, my dad's the housing guy, so he knows all about HUD. So I was going to talk to different local organizations in the next week or so just to see if we can't get that mobile unit to come down from Providence, can we get Newport's homeless population to that mobile unit in Providence, or is there another solution?
There's a statewide homeless group that has a pretty good idea of where those, where there are these, I forget what they call the various centers where they provide showers, all that. A number in Providence, I know in Pawtucket, think in West Warwick, and I think one or two in Newport, but I'm not sure. But that's the group that coordinates a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in talking to them just because, again, I think with COVID and everyone losing their homes and their jobs, I think we're going to see a lot more people out on the streets. And that's definitely something that we have to address because all residents and their quality of life is important.
Meagan, what other, you mentioned it during, did we finish up on your priorities?
Yes.
Okay. What other ideas, you mentioned it a little bit while talking about your priorities, would you have for the North End? What else would you like to see in the North End? 10 years from now, what is the perfect North End that makes the most sense for all residents of Newport?
I think so I was born with a really aggressive type of skin cancer. A lot of people know that, a lot of people don't. So I go to South County Commons at least 3 or 4 times a year just to go to my skin doctor. And I love South County Commons. You have a movie theater, you have restaurants, you have shops, you have condos. And that's kind of my vision for the North End. In addition to having more things for the kids in our community to do, I think that's something that's really lacking. When I was a kid, we had 2 bowling alleys in Middletown. We had Wow Play Center. And now we don't really have any of that. And I think it's important to give kids things to do, to give them structure, and to keep them off of drugs and alcohol. And so they're not sitting at home playing video games. So just having that mixed use with the workforce housing and things for kids to do, instead of just saying, oh, well, we'll put a big parking lot there and shuttle people downtown. Because in my opinion, that's not going to work. I've been to Disney World with my family several times. And when you think about it, if you have this shuttle that takes the people from their cars into Disney, but yet if you had a parking lot that was right outside the gate, those parents are going to want to park in the parking lot that's right next to the gate. They're not going to want to take a shuttle because that just doesn't make sense when you have your kids and it's hot and you have strollers and backpacks. So as long as we have parking that's right downtown, I think busing or shuttling people in, I don't see how that's going to work with tourists knowing that parking in Newport is still an option. And I just don't think just putting a parking lot in the North End is the answer. I think they deserve better than that. And the whole open spaces, the Navy land, I think that's something that we should definitely be utilizing in the Carpionato project. They're going to provide as far as livable wage jobs and job training and just getting all Newporters jobs that need them.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by workforce housing?
So I mentioned in my introduction on another forum the other day that a lot of people don't realize that Newport has one of the highest rates of, I don't like calling it low income housing, but I also feel like I can't call it workforce housing because I kind of fall into that middle where I make too much for low income, but not enough to buy a house kind of thing. So I think just having housing for people that fall into that kind of middle income bracket is really important because we talk about the innovation hub and how that was supposed to bring more people into town, and they're building condos in Cranston, Calvert, where I went to elementary school. But I've heard about what they're planning on charging for the rent there. And as a single person, I know I can't afford that. And I do pretty well for myself. I don't want to use my whole paycheck to pay for living expenses. That just doesn't make sense. And then I can't go out to shops and restaurants in town and spend money the way that we need to be supporting our local businesses. So I think that you need to have homes that fall into that middle income bracket.
Megan, some ideas on how to make Newport more attractive. I can say that word, attractive, and affordable place to live, particularly for all people at all levels. You've touched on it a little bit, as well as for families.
Yes, I mean, I think you guys have mentioned this before. I think Newport's already an attractive place to live. I've lived here my whole life, and I don't really want to move unless I have to. So I think just focusing on, like I said before, just marketing Newport as a desirable historically significant place. I think that's how we get families to want to move here. And I know that Discover Newport does a great job. The Newport Historical Society does a great job, but I think there's always ways to kind of improve, and that's what I would be interested in looking at.
One of the things, and I know I'm jumping to a different subject real quickly, but one of the things that's been brought up occasionally by other candidates is a relationship between the school committee and the council. How do you see that relationship?
So I've had people ask me, why are you running for city council when you're so passionate about our schools? Like, why don't you run for school committee? But I still think that the city council has a really major influence over what happens with our schools. I do think that it would be nice to see them kind of more in a cohesive unit, if you will, because it seems like a lot of people have a lot of different opinions, and obviously you're not always going to agree. But if you could come down to something where it's agreeable for everyone, I think that's beneficial for our kids.
You've seen the government operate here in Newport longer than many, since you were born, raised here. Do you think anything in local government, kind of playing off that last one, needs to be changed with a charter review, such as, for examples, going from 2-year terms to 4-year terms for city council members, going from 4 at large to 7 at large, and everybody representing a different ward, to being a term limit, to possibly doing a mayor-strong government. Anything you would like to see with a charter review in changing the way local government is run?
I know just from my own personal experience over the last few months that I don't think a 2-year term is a long enough period of time. I can't believe that tomorrow the primary is in 2 weeks. I feel like it was just yesterday that I was announcing with you guys and declaring. So I think just all of the effort that it takes to run, I think candidates deserve more than just 2 years. I think a 4-year term is definitely something that should be looked at. So I guess my answer would be yes, I do support a charter review. I fully support our current mayor or chair, I should say. And I just think that in terms of looking nationally, I think that having the people elect a mayor would be better than having 4 at-large candidates sit in a room and go back and forth and back and forth. I just think that's a more fair way of going about it. And then just looking at term limits, without naming names, I just both nationally and locally, I think people eventually just get tired of the same old. So I think that's something that I would want to look at too.
Can I follow up on that? Electing a mayor. When you suggest electing a mayor, then do you also suggest getting rid of the town administrator, or electing a mayor that performs the current role, which is primarily the council president, and having a city manager? I'm confused. Usually when a community elects a mayor, that's their full-time administrator. Is that what you're looking at?
I don't want to, I'm not saying get rid of the city manager. And again, I think Jamie does a great job as mayor. I just feel like it should be a popular vote with the city versus the 4 at-large candidates choosing who it is. And I'm
So
sorry if
perhaps
I
the
worded
top
that.
vote getter.
Right.
Okay. So
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to envision this as having a vote for council and then having another vote for mayor. If as Ryan has suggested, that being the top vote getter, then that accomplishes what you're looking at.
That's what I was trying to say. Sorry.
There you go. That's why he's a wordsman.
It's been a long couple of months, Frank. I'm sorry. I don't even know what
No.
day it
You
is.
know what? And the other thing that I believe about elections is that the candidates learn along the way. They learn from each other, and the hopefully the winning candidates will not automatically discard every other candidate's viewpoint, but we'll take a look at them and see, in fact, if there are things that they can use to incorporate into whatever programs they put together. Elections are about discussing important issues of the city and helping to try and galvanize everybody into finding the best solutions. I have one last question, and that's what do you love about Newport, and why do you call it home?
What don't I love about Newport? Oh my God, how much time do I have? I think just for me, I mean, I already said I was born and raised here. I don't want to move. Just my mom's cousin was in the America's Cup here. My dad's uncle taught JFK and Jackie O how to play tennis here. And I just think about people, and not many people can say that they have that connection to history, and just waking up every day and going to the local coffee shop. I've got my nitro bar here. And going to the beach and going to Cliff Walk. And I have to say, I haven't actually toured all the mansions. So that's kind of one of the things that's on my to-do list. I've seen most of them, but not all of them. And just, we get to wake up every day and just walk everywhere. And that's something that not a lot of people get to experience. So I consider myself really blessed that my parents are here, my grandparents were here. I got to grow up with my grandparents, and just be in that tight-knit community is something that I definitely don't take for granted. I just want to thank my employer too. They've been really, really, really supportive through all of this, and we're missing one of my coworkers right now. So I just want to say hi to him. I'm sure he's watching, and we can't wait to have him back. But yeah, I just love this town, and that's why I'm not running for the fame. I'm obviously not running for the money because it's not much. But I want what's best for Newport, and I hope people see that. And yeah, I'm not the most experienced politically, but if you give me the opportunity, I'm going to work really hard for you. And that's all that I have to say.
Meagan, if you were sitting where Frank's sitting, and we're asking the questions, I don't know why I'm picking on you, Frank, but
Everybody does.
what question would you like to see candidates answer, or what question would you ask every single candidate, or what question do you think voters should be asking of candidates?
Just how fiscally responsible are you? What's your credit score? No, I'm kidding. I think the budget's going to be something that we have to look at going forward. But no, in all seriousness, I think what kind of a Newport do you see in 5 years from now, or maybe with COVID, that's too soon, maybe 10 years from now? And realistically, not just what you'd ideally like to see, but what you actually envision Newport looking like. In terms of schools and housing and jobs and that sort of thing. And how are you going to make that happen?
And Meagan, did we miss anything that you wanted to go further in depth with? Any topics that you're passionate about? Anything you want voters to know? Anything at all that we may have missed?
I'm just looking at all my notes here.
I'll do the same while I'm going through my first interview of the week. I want to make sure we didn't miss anything as well.
Meanwhile, I'm looking at my hats.
Okay.
Frank, I haven't heard your grandfather clock go off. I'm kind of.
You know what? No, very good. I found the silence button.
Oh, okay.
Did you do it just for this, or so that way you can sleep at
No,
night?
just for this. Just for this.
It's funny
Oh,
because I've
oh.
had my hand over the mute button waiting to hit it.
So there were actually two more things I want to mention if you can give me the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll try to make it quick. I have talked to a lot of people about liquor licenses in town. I think that's definitely something that if I were elected, I would look at how we can make it feasible for young people to open restaurants and bars in the city, because the way things are right now, it's impossible unless you want to take on a whole heck of a lot of debt. And it's not really fair to the existing restaurants and bars that have paid a lot of money to get the liquor licenses that they have, that they're just going to keep going up and up and up and up and up. And how do we manage that as a city? And then the other thing that I would want to mention is I've lived in Newport my whole life, and I don't know if this is just something that I've never noticed before, or if it's something that's kind of gotten worse in the last few years. But just the whole not in my backyard mentality, it's something that's been really bothering me lately. Just looking at Angela McCall and trying to make our streets safer for our kids when they go to school, and how much the word implement was focused on at that city council meeting. That's why I'm running, because our kids' safety has to come first. And I encourage people to not focus so much on verbiage sometimes, but actually action. And I know they said that they couldn't really enact those solutions in such a short period of time, but I find it hard to believe that we couldn't at least come up with some short-term solutions in the interim while we're looking at long-term ones. So that's something that I would want to look more at.
Excellent. Frank, do you have anything else?
I don't, Megan. Thank you very much. Interesting interview and lots of good ideas.
Thank
Megan,
you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. And if people want to get a hold of you to find out more information, ask questions, to chat, have a conversation, have coffee, how can they get a hold of you?
So I know it's hard going door to door this year, and I apologize to voters for not having been able to do that. I know you guys have mentioned with COVID, it's just not something that candidates are really doing this year. So I urge you to call me or text me if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, and let's talk. My cell phone number is 401-339-4639. I put it out on all my business cards, so I could certainly give it to you guys. My email address is Meagan Elizabeth Landry. You can see the Meagan Landry spelled there. And you can also reach out to me on my Facebook page. It's public. I don't make the comments public, but I will certainly add you, and I'm happy to have a dialogue. And yeah, I think that I encourage voters to look at, I know, Ryan, you posted the article about donations, and I don't think someone with little donations should be looked at any less than someone with a lot of donations, because I think you have to look at where those donations come from. So that's just something that I wanted to note as well. And rather than people donate to my campaign, I would rather you just, if you like what I have to say, just ask 5 or 10 people, who are you voting for, and would you vote for Meagan? Because that would honestly mean more to me than a monetary thing.
Excellent. And well, we appreciate you joining us. I know taking an hour out of any day, especially while campaigning and working and COVID and life, is a lot. So we appreciate you taking the time, and we wish you the very best of luck. A reminder that Meagan is running at large. So that means on September 8th, when you go, wherever you live in Newport, when you go to vote, or if you vote ahead of time, I hear more and more people, I'm glad we're doing these early. A lot of people have already voted or are voting early. You're going to choose up to 4 of the 12, and then the top 8 of those 12 will move on to November. So you'll find Meagan at large in all 3 wards of Newport. Anything else, Meagan? That's
it. I encourage everyone, whether you vote for me or vote for someone else, just get out and vote on September 8th, and then again on November 3rd. It's our civic duty. And I voted every year since I was legally able to, and I hope that you do the same. And please vote for a new school.
Excellent.
Thank you, Meagan.
Thank you, Meagan. Best of luck.
Guys.
Have a good day. All right, that is Meagan Landry. And that
very good.
is the latest, and you can watch her video if you missed a portion of it, or any of the other candidates. You can also see candidate profiles, candidate answers to Alliance for a Livable Newport questions, and much more in our City of Newport voter guide. And
One of the
Frank,
things
we got a busy day ahead.
Yeah, we do. I just wanted to mention one quick thing because we always ask this question about systemic racism, I'm not sure that people know how to deal with that because it's a hard one on how you respond to that. I was talking with Danielle Cheeseborough this morning. She is the first selectman in Stonington, which is the equivalent of mayor in Connecticut, and they have something going in, I guess, going from town to town called the Freedom Forum, which sounds really interesting. In which they have these panels set up. The idea is for people to talk about looking at the whole issue from themselves, and looking introspectively about their views and how they deal with all of those issues, and then looking at, in fact, how the community should respond. I thought, what a great idea to be able to do that and have that kind of dialogue out in the community where everybody's able to be there and everybody's able to share ideas, and from that perhaps come solutions.
Well, perhaps you and I should chat further after this, and maybe we can get it going via video like this, and do a little series.
Couldn't we? Yeah.
There's nothing
Absolutely.
stopping us from facilitating.
We can do everything, even climbing Mount Everest.
We can try. Otherwise, we can watch online somebody else do it. All right, Frank. I'm going to give you a couple hours off. We will be back this afternoon at 5 p.m. with Charlie.
Well, actually, we're going to be back at 3:30.
We will be back at 3:30.
Yeah, with the superintendent. So
superintendent of Newport Public Schools. So just a reminder, we have the governor coming up at 1 p.m. today. We'll have that for you live on our Facebook page, YouTube, as well as website. 3:30, Colleen Burns-Germain, superintendent of Newport Public Schools, will join us for a chat about what is the latest with schools. She'll also join us next Monday at 3:30. And then coming up at 5, we will have Charlie Holder, who's running for Ward 2. And then we have some other candidates coming up tomorrow. We have 3 tomorrow, and we have 1 on Wednesday, and then we're moving on to a different race.
And we'll have over the next few weeks, hopefully most of the candidates around Aquidneck Island, you're going to meet one way or another.
And I have senators and candidates trying to schedule and calling me and texting me. So we will we'll keep this going. And if one thing I haven't asked, if you enjoy what we're doing here, please share it with your friends, family, neighbors. Let people know this information is readily available. We'd appreciate it. All right, Frank, we will talk in just a little bit.
All right. See you later.
All right. On behalf of Frank Prosnitz, Ryan Belmore, and all of us here at What's Up Newp, I want to thank you for watching. What'sUpNewp.com has the entire video voter guide, and you can see that there and be an informed voter on September 8th and November 3rd. We will catch up with you later this afternoon.